Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today. This is Dr. Allison Alford. She's down in Texas. And yeah, we're going to get into some stuff. She's a professor, she's a researcher of families, but specifically adult daughters and how they relate in the family organization, I guess you could say. So we're going to get into that. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Angela. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, let's get into things. What got you into, why did you want to become a professor and get into research, particularly, whenever you went to school way back, whenever that was?
Yeah, well, I finished my PhD about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, because I was one of those, kind of off schedule people who decided after I had kids that I needed to go back and finish this
Oh, interesting.
passion of mine in education. So I didn't end up getting my starting my PhD till I was 30. So but the funny thing is, I was raised by a marriage and family therapist. So I like to say that I grew up talking about talking. Like, oh, when we talk like that, this happens. Or, you could see in that movie, my mom would always say, in that movie, see how that person is talking to that person and it
Mm.
causes, this. So my whole life, I had an interest in relationships, in families, in marriages, couples, and the good side and the bad side. But I really was privy to this close up look at the tiny things that people do that make a difference in their lives. So when I went to graduate school at the University of Texas, and I was in the communication studies department, I was in the area studying interpersonal relationships. I was really thinking, as most people who go to get a PhD kind of think, what is it I could look into that other people aren't already doing or hasn't already been done? And that's where I started noticing there's a lot missing here about women in a variety of ways. The way we think about women, but especially in those little tiny moments. And that's what led me to eventually study adult daughters.
Cool. And so you went to school after, was that quite a shakeup for your family of you going back to school after your kids? Like, what were you doing when the kids were born and you had the kids? Were you a stay-at-home mom or were you working full-time also at the time?
Yeah, great question. It was a ginormous shakeup for our family for me to go to back to graduate school. So, my husband and I had two little kids. I have a son and a daughter, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And one of the things that I realized was I didn't like that very much. So it's one of the things that when I was younger, when we were young married, my husband and I agreed on like this is important to us, family is important to us, and it is so important. But I was doing the stay-at-home mom thing while also occasionally teaching college classes at the local community college. I already had my master's degree in communication. And so I had kind of had 3 quarters in this family world and 1 quarter still left in this professional world. And what I realized was, gosh, I love my children a lot. I love my family a lot, but I'm not really made for stay at home life. With my children. And part of that is because I completely misunderstood what being a stay at home parent is earlier in life. It's a huge job and it is a lot of household management and a lot of cleaning and cooking and planning and preparing. And I realized I am much more qualified and expert at thinking work, getting lost in books, spending time analyzing what's going on in the world and having these big, deep intellectual thoughts. And that and making dinner on time don't always go well together. So I talked to my family about that itch that I had to complete a childhood dream. And it's true that when I was a child, I drew a little drawing, and my mom still has it, that I said, I want to be a doctor. Um, and so I just decided, and never a medical doctor, but I knew about professors and doctors. And I talked to my family and I said, okay, what's gonna work? We sold our home, we moved, we put the kids in like early pre-K, childcare. We started to get a lot of help from a lot of people to make things happen. But it was a family endeavor to make this dream happen for me. But
Wow.
the beautiful out outcome was that we all together completely changed our family's trajectory. We changed our lives.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think education changes our lives. And what's funny about education, and I'm a professor now, so I have to say that, right? To be like, education. What's funny about education is the way it changes you is often different than what you think. You think like, I'll go in and I'll learn history or I'll learn, this business thing, and then I'll just be, I'll learn how to make widgets. But what changes you is the way you think about yourself, the opportunities that you think about before you, the people that you meet. And what ended up happening as a result of my education was I learned and trained all about family communication. I started thinking about what would later become this big idea of mine. But at the time, I was working just in small ways in the business school, the McCombs Business School at UT. And I ended up getting a job as a professor in a business school at Baylor University. And my family, we moved. My husband was able to quit his job as a teacher and a coach, which he'd been working 70, 80 hours a week, and start his passion, which is real estate investing. And the kids got to, you know, see that they were an important part of that. It would not have happened without all of us committing to achieving my dream that became our dream. But nothing in families is done alone. It's all done with the support of each other and in that network connection.
Wow, that's cool. And so you got into a daughtering. I think that's the name of your book. Is that correct?
Good Daughtering is the name of
Good
my book.
daughtering.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So tell us a little bit about what got you into that and what you've discovered.
Yeah, so as I was researching about families and doing these studies, I mean, that's kind of what getting a PhD is, at least in my field. You read a lot of stuff, you think, gosh, we want to know more about this thing, and then you set up some sort of study. So for me, that included interviewing people and asking them about what it was like to be a daughter. Because as I read the research, it's really difficult to read something and look for what's not there. That is,
Hmm.
kind of strange. But I was reading and noticing we have research and books and lore and cultural conversations about daughters in childhood and adolescence. Um, in terms of thinking about women, we think about them as married people, we think about them as career people, we think about women as friends. And then we start to think of women as daughters again when their parents get older and something happens, a parent has a need, the daughter steps in. But what I noticed was this gap in the middle of a woman's life where we were really only thinking of women as like, married people or single people or divorced people. Um, and we weren't thinking about the little things, the nuances, the special things daughters do every day that help families stay connected. Instead, we really talk about daughters or think about them as kind of just existing out there and waiting to be filled up with mothering, or they're just sort of a bland part of the family system. And in my experience, that was not accurate. My role in our family, and particularly in a special relationship I had with my mom, was to be active, to try to keep us connected. And I don't want to make that all sound like it's so sweet and friendly all the time. My mom, I was like, this woman is a lot of work. Like, I have to, get her to get her flu shot or That's a medical thing. But I have to
Mhm.
call her and find time. I have to listen to her troubles at work. I have to remind her, like, hey, let's go shopping together. I have to put in the effort. And the effort is staying connected. But the other side of that is the effort is trying to not argue, not be disconnected, not have conflict. And I realize I spent a lot of time and energy on that endeavor. And that's why we needed to see and take a look at women as daughters, as active agents in a family, and think about what are daughters doing. Well, and when you think of what are daughters are doing daughtering. And let's look into that and think, what is daughtering? And ask a bunch of women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, what do you do as a daughter in an everyday sense that helps keep your family connected?
And what were some of the things you found difference between sons and daughters in that relationship?
Yeah, there's a lot of difference between sons and daughters, but I think we got to give sons their due a little bit, right?
Right.
We've got to say some nice things about sons here. I have a son who is wonderful and does some great sunning, and I have a husband who's a fantastic son. And so let's say some good things first. First, sons do show up for their family. Sons love being in families. Sons are, sweet to their parents. But the real crux of it is that sons are not expected to do as much, meaning
Hmm.
by society, by their parents. There's much less expectation and there's much less overall investment in terms of your emotional and cognitive labor when you think about what you do in a family. So when I was looking into this, I realized doing daughtering is so much more than just tasks. Tasks are, I drive my mom to the doctor. That's why we think about a lot about daughters with elders. But what are the tasks that younger daughters do? We make phone calls, we do visits, we bring gifts, we make the holiday meal, we take over, when our parents don't want to. One daughter told me there was a hurricane coming towards my parents' house and they couldn't get there. So I went over and boarded up the doors. Like we do a lot of tasks,
Mhm.
but way more than that. We do emotional work,
Mhm.
we do cognitive work. We're always thinking about our parents. We're worrying about them. We're planning things for families. We're planning what we're going to do for our parents 30 years from now.
Mhm.
And that is something that takes up space in women's minds
Mhm.
that does not take up space in men's minds. So sons are very active in families in certain ways, but they don't use this full spectrum of their resources quite as much. They don't feel like they have to, they're not expected to. And so daughters are giving just way more on volume um, to their families and to the thinking work, the emotion work, the task work. And the last one that I talk about is identity work. We think about and feel like a daughter in lots of spaces. Even when our parents not around, we're their daughter, we act as their daughter, we represent them. You're out in the world and they say like, "Oh, are you Pam's daughter?" And you're out there representing the family with your identity as well. And doing all those things, doing all that daughtering takes up a lot of our energy and it deserves recognition when we're doing that in again all the way through life, not just in these massive critical moments um, of need for our parents.
And do you see this as I don't know what the word is. I'm curious. As a problem's not the right word. Struggle. Should it be changed? That's the word.
That's a yeah, something so important. Like as I talk about all this output of what daughters do, I think
Yeah, like
one
is
of
it
the
healthy? Is you think it's a good
right,
thing, or
right.
is it a thing that maybe daughters should or should like? Well, I'm just curious thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah. When we talk about like, wow, daughtering takes up a lot of resources, it would be easy to then think, terrible. How unfair.
Right.
Let's let that stop.
Right.
Um, but ultimately, what I talk about in my book is the first step is just awareness. What are daughters doing? What is daughtering? Wow, there's so many other things that count as daughtering that I didn't realize I was doing. Oh, or I didn't notice my sibling was doing. And then your eyes become opened. The second step is thinking, what do I want? Now that I see all that I'm doing, do I want to do more? Do I want to do less? Do I want to do it differently? Maybe I don't need to
Mm.
do so many tasks because I see, gosh, I'm doing a lot of thinking. And good job, me, pat on the back. So I can reduce the tasks by acknowledging the thinking or emotion work. Or like in my dynamic for my family, I do a lot of the emotion work with my parents, and my sister does more of the tasks. And so we can shift what we do and we can decide more or less or different. And then that last part of my what I talk about in the book is then how to change. If I
Mm.
want to change the dynamic, and each of us should decide on our own.
Right.
There is no right way to do daughtering. All daughtering is good daughtering. Uh, then then you can take that into your hands because daughters are active agents in our family. So your relationship with your parents is not happening to you. You can affect the change. So there's no right way to do it, but you get to decide for yourself and then take charge of that and make steps towards having the life and the family relationship that you want to have.
That's cool. So I'm curious for you, because you said when you realized that you're like doing all these things with your mom and it's, what did you decide? Did you end up cutting back on some things or, were you just like, yeah, this is just a knowledge thing, we're good where we're at? Like, did you make any changes? I'm curious.
Yeah, I definitely have. And I think
Okay.
as we grow and change over time and context changes and what our parents can do or can't do or what we can do or can't do because we have kids. I have kids and they've got so many sports games and they've got all these things. But one of the things that I did was I gave myself permission to not feel like I had to do as many in-person visits
Hmm.
because I recognized I was doing a lot on the phone. I was doing the checking in. I'm sending Instagram memes. We use an app called Marco Polo. I'm sending Marco Polos, and I don't live right by my parents, but I had this mechanism in mind, like I've got to go every so often. I have to go on
Hmm.
these holidays. I must
Hmm.
be at this type of thing. Um, but my sister lives down the street from my parents. And so I think the beauty is that I decided it with my sibling.
Oh, cool.
You're going to take on some of the being nearby task things. And it's okay if you don't want to do some of the emotional things. I'll do that. I'll do that on the phone. I'll do that with these apps or devices. And actually, it's so much easier to talk to somebody with kind of deep emotional things when you're not right there
Yeah.
because you could just
Especially
let
someone like
loose.
close to you. Hmm.
Yeah. And I'm just not going to like see them on the sidewalk or at the restaurant the next day if we had a deep conversation. So I really did give myself permission to be like, Allison, you don't have to go in person to be achieving something.
Right.
um, you are already achieving it. So and I was very blessed that when I told my parents about my research, when I started unpacking these ideas, which have been a decade in the making, um, my mom, who is the therapist, she started saying things to me like, "You're such a good daughter," or "Thank you for daughtering me today." And it's
I
really
know.
meaningful to
Yeah.
have someone tell you good job. And I guess I'm a person who loves a gold star, you know. But
Affirmations, words of affirmation.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you're in your marriage and your spouse says to you, thank you so much for doing that, or unloading the dishwasher, or like, whatever, showing up for me or planning this date night. It's so nice. If you have a friend and your friend says to you, oh gosh, thanks for coming to this event, or whatever. Um, but we don't always see that with daughters, where the parent says to the adult child, Thank you for organizing this holiday event. Thank you for making sure that I have access to the grandkids. Thank you for fixing my Netflix for me, or my phone. Or thank you for teaching me what that weird new slang was about that people are using. Like, whether it's teaching or training or emotions or listening or access, we need more people to understand daughtering so we can shine a spotlight on how
Mm,
great it is. And then daughters don't always feel like they need to quit or do more or do less or do different. We just feel like it matters.
mm,
And that is a beautiful reward.
mm. I love that. My parents, obviously I'm a daughter, and my mom is, she always says thank you so much. She's like, hey, I appreciate it. And it does feel good. She's always, super grateful. And I like how you said, I went through the same thing. I was having to see my parents once a week, and they're about an hour and a half from me one way. And I was doing that. And when COVID happened and I couldn't see them, I just remember the relief of like, I don't have to drive. I just was so excited that I had to be stuck at home and I didn't have to. And there was other things that I felt I just had to do, had to do, had to do. And that changed our whole, like, now it's just like, yeah, I'll see you when I see you. And I mean, I see them a lot. That's a
Yeah.
big priority, but it's not the I have to see you. I don't feel guilty because, oh my gosh, it went a week and I didn't see them. And, and we call every day. Like, so yeah, it's just reaching. I love that, reaching what works for you. And that does make a lot of sense because my brother just, he's around. So, but
Yeah.
he's around when he wants to be around, and there's no like feeling. I mean, if we need him, we call him, he's there. But he's not like the one that's calling every day and
Yeah.
checking in or anything close to that. So it makes total
Yeah,
sense.
it's a different level of cognitive load. And I think that we're ready for this conversation because we're having so many conversations about the
Mm-hmm.
mental load, and we're having conversations about invisible labor. And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, that's what we're describing here. A daughter, adult daughters, women, because every woman is a daughter. Not every woman becomes a mother. Not every woman becomes a spouse or is a spouse at all
Right.
times in their life. Not every woman is a career woman. Uh, not every woman is a neighbor. I mean, maybe you just live off the grid, but everybody's a daughter. And you're a daughter even if your parents are gone, even if they've not they're not participating in your life, or if they've passed away, you are still a daughter. And 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 there's just a lot that daughters do with thinking and filling up these sort of invisible spaces in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
wondering, thinking, preparing, anxiously waiting for things about our parents. And the thing is that sons don't tend to do that. And I do think there are plenty of other wonderful things that sons do, and they fill up their cognitive
Mm-hmm.
load with other things, but they're not typically directed at
It's
the
true.
elder generation of
Daughters are
their
definitely
family.
different. Yeah.
Daughters are different in that intergenerational ties, thinking upward in ways that sons,
No.
a majority of sons don't do. There are lots of great sons who are doing it, especially sons who don't have daughters or daughters-in-law in the family. There are some great sons who do it, or some men who are just
Mm-hmm.
predisposed to thinking that way.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, it's the
Mm-hmm.
daughters.
That's so true. I love that. So if you're a daughter, get the book, which will be in the show notes. Secondly, go through, I love that, what is it you're doing and is it where you want to be? What needs to change or not. Maybe it needs to change the other way. And you're like, I never see my mom. Maybe I should see her more often. Maybe I should see her. Like whatever it is, think about that. Just like any other relationship is a relationship that can evolve and change as you grow. So I love that. In wrapping up, I always have three final questions and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be impactful for your listeners. First and final question, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
When looking for your purpose, be sure to look at all of the parts of yourself, all your roles, and all your identities, and recognize that there are unpaid, often hidden to the world, unacknowledged by other people, parts of yourself that you can acknowledge and find beautiful and find meaningful and find purpose in.
Cool. I love that. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
Oh gosh. In our family, we have a motto, and our family motto is Alfred's Find a Way. And I try to impress that upon my children, and remind myself of that there's always a way. It may not look like what we thought it looked like, but we are determined, passionate, energetic people. And so Alfred's Find a Way.
Love that. Third and final question, what's one word or sentence you'd want on your gravestone?
I would like a recipe on my gravestone because I have recently seen that as kind of a trend. Some people finding those here and there, just
Wow.
rarely. And I make these family recipe of sausage balls at the holidays. And I think that it's a super easy recipe. It's
Oh, that's
2 cups of cheese and 2 cups of Bisquick and 1 pound of sausage. And you put that all together, mix it with your hands, get it in there, room temperature's better, and bake it for 10 to 15 minutes at 350. And I think that's a simple, quick recipe, but it's handed down through my family and something we do as a family every holiday season. So I would just put that right there on my tombstone.
Oh, that's so cool. I've never heard of something like that. That is a cool idea. I love that. Very neat. So you run into someone in a coffee shop and they were listening to all this. What's something though we didn't touch on that you think would really, really impactful for listeners to hear?
Yes. One thing we didn't touch on is if you are in a high conflict family and you're thinking, wow, Allison just talked about this perfect family or something that I've never been a part of. I want to acknowledge that not all families are healthy. Some are
Mm.
toxic or have abuse or substances or other circumstances at play. And if those are your circumstances, then please protect yourself and find a professional who can help you. And so there's in no way me recommending that you charge back into a narcissist's Thanksgiving table and just try to do daughtering. So recognizing that for a vast majority of families, we're in the middle. You know,
Mm.
it's kind of meh all the way to kind of good. But there are no families that are perfectly happy and everybody's doing great all the time. But there are some families where there's some toxic things happening, and you have every right to get out of that and protect yourself.
Cool. I love that. Guys, if you have any questions or anything like that, we'll have all of Allison's information, her book, all that stuff in the show notes. Definitely feel free to reach out. I know that she is super helpful, I can tell. And so, guys, let's go out there. Let's share this. Let's share this with daughters in your life, which every female is a daughter in a daughter at some point. Well, through their whole life, they're always a daughter. Actually, but if we can go out there, if we can change the world, one person or one starfish at a time, together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on, Allison.
Thanks so much.